Hey, over here.
What do we got?
Yeah, it was found like this.
Oh, jeez.
I think it's been dead a long time.
It's not dead. In fact, it's back.
All right, I got this.
Quirky procedurals aren't dead. They've been around for forever. There was just a time where in the mid-2000s to early 2010s, a lot of these series would have crossed over and ended at different times, but we had The Dead Zone, The Mentalist, my personal favorite Psych, Monk, Castle, and a personal underrated favorite in Lie to Me. Why am I talking about old shows? Why am I talking about procedurals at all? Well, I can stand them, but I don't really jump deep into them. Of course, there are tons that have their quirks to make them unique, and that was a time in which, yeah, there was some uniqueness to it. We had an author can now suddenly solve crime, and then we've got a mentalist, a guy who knows all the human tricks and can trick them into, outing themselves or figuring out why they did what they did. No different than Sean and Psych, but we had all these different people with quirks. And now I feel like we're in a renaissance again. But only recently, like in the past couple of years, have a good amount of shows just risen up above the others. And I think some of them are still airing right now. Some of them have at least a season or have started their second season. And usually a procedural is just any sort of thing. Most people are used to cop shows where maybe somebody is taken out or something happens to them. They got to find the bad guy. They've got to do the process, and then you figure out who the bad guy is at the end. That's usually a standard procedural, but it can be applied to other things. Say House. House would have been at that time, and it would have been, he thinks it's one thing. He gets it wrong a couple times. You watch the process, he figures it out in the end, usually saves the day. That's how procedurals are. In the end, that's usually how it goes. So I've got a handful I'm watching. I've got their unique quirks and whether or not they're appealing and what levels of procedural they are. And first up, I was going to start with Will Trent. I think a good handful of people know about this show. It's on its second season, starring Ramon Rodriguez with a good supporting cast. And he's actually an officer of the law. It's called the JBI in the TV show. Don't know if it's real or not. But he handles major crimes. His draw is he had a very traumatic past. They do a good amount of portion with that as an arcing storyline or an episode gets dedicated to it. But it's a good solid show, fully rounded. These newer shows and keeping up with streaming and having to hook you all the time, they do the procedural while still having an overall arc, which wasn't unheard of in a lot of older shows. But even in those older shows, they still had to fight for syndication most of the time. They couldn't always do these big arcs because the rewatchability kind of falls away. And now I figured I'd do the show High Potential, starring It's Always Sunny's Caitlin Olsen. It's based on a French TV show, and basically she's just genius level smart, and she's like Sean from Psych without, lying about being a psychic. She could see the pieces to the puzzle, she puts them together, figures out the crime. It's not too bad. I imagine it'll get renewed and more people want more of it, so it's a good time to get into it whilst it's on its break. Jumping over to a different network, Paramount, we've got Matlock. Matlock is currently airing with Kathy Bates, and it pokes a lot of jokes at the old Matlock, but it's a lawyer procedural where they're solving cases the whole time, but really it's also like a spy espionage type thing if you think about it. She has her own motivation for doing what she does, and they always do these little reveals at the end of the overall plot of things she's figuring out. And the cast is decent. We've got Beau Bridges in there. Funny enough, Jason Ritter, which always throws me off when I see him or hear him in other stuff, and I'm just like, oh man, that's Dipper. Don't watch Captive Fall. He says some things in his voice that you can't unhear. But it's a solid show overall. It's not anywhere near over, so I can't vouch for the payoff, but I will keep watching because it's interesting enough. Next up is Elsbeth, which it's a hit or miss, and I feel like it's going to be that way for some people. I don't mind it, and its hook is a little bit different than most procedurals, in which you get told the killer immediately. I figured I should start out saying that before I jump into anything else. So you know who the killer is, you get to watch how they figure it out. Elsbeth, our main character, played by Carrie Preston, who I only know as being the most annoying character in True Blood, and she's apparently been in some other stuff like The Good Wife. I've only seen True Blood, so that's the only past performance I've got. But she was a lawyer and is now overseeing the police department because there's been possible inclinations of corruption, and so she's investigating certain things. That's her overall arc, and you get to see that behind the scenes every now and then, whilst focusing on the main procedural part of her figuring out the case and telling the police why they're wrong, because she locks on to the killer almost immediately, and then she has to find a way to prove it. It's funny that you know who the killer is, and you just, the little things she locks onto to kind of lean into is, some of it's far-fetched, but it's still an interesting, entertaining show. I like a more scientific approach, and that's going to bring me to my last two. My last two are different in their approaches because all those other ones are pretty standard where you're kind of in the same setting over and over and over again. One's on Paramount still, Tracker, starring Justin Hartley, who I know as Green Arrow from Smallville, but he's been in other stuff. You may have seen him around. I think This Is Us was kind of popular for a while. But anyways, he's got the job of being a hired tracker or rewardist, I believe is the term he uses in the show. But he finds people, places, things, whatever. He can do it all. And that's what's cool about his procedural. He is a guy that goes into dangerous situations. He's often armed. He has to play detective. But he's not just finding people. He's finding things. He's getting involved in a lot of different stuff. There's one about aliens. He just kind of gets to go wherever across the USA, which, is fun. It reminds me of another procedural that did okay in its time, like Supernatural. And speaking of which, Jensen Ackles appears on the show multiple times as a side character that may be important. And I think that was part of the draw for me, but not entirely. I did watch it before he ever showed up, so it might be a draw for you. And my last one is on Peacock, which is The Irrational, starring Jesse L. Martin, who I think a lot of people know as the dad from The Flash, West, Cop West, Detective West, Dad West. I really don't remember his first name. But anyways, The Irrational is good to me because I was a big fan of Lie to Me. And they're not exactly the same, but the fact that it's based on the study of human behavior and how people react or act in certain situations and how there's science behind every specific thing. Now, some of it is faux science, just like it was in Lie to Me. Not everything is super, super true, but a lot of it is based in real stuff. And I think I enjoyed that part, but it's the fact that he's not really a police guy. He's not involved like all the other people. He's never armed. He is a professor at a college, and he gets roped into helping with a lot of different things. And because of that, he gets to go all over. He doesn't stay in one place. He's not dealing with the same thing every episode. It's not always a crime. Sometimes it's just random different things. There was an episode where he was trying to suss out if somebody was cheating in a poker tournament. There was a different episode where you have to figure out if a horse killed a guy. And there is a lot of different stuff going on in that show. His main arc was a tragic past where he was blown up in a bomb and his body is scarred from it. His main draw is he usually is the smartest guy in the room, but that doesn't mean he knows everything, and you often get to see him play with that. He runs experiments and he tries to see how different things work out between different groups of people, different subsets, all this. And I like that aspect of the show just as much as I do him figuring out or reading a person and their actions or figuring out a situation. And I think he's doing really solid. I always liked his acting on The Flash, but he becomes kind of a throwaway side character there. He's in full frontal on this, and I'm glad to see him for it because, again, this show and Lie to Me was so good, not to go off. The big draw was Tim Roth and his performance. He was great in that, and the subcast was good. I really like the subcast of The Irrational, and he really leads it well. I mean, you can see him teaching his younger characters. You can see him interacting with his loved ones, and you can really see him grow even though he knows so much. So anyways, if you're looking for a procedural that's not a dun-dun-dun, been running for 20 years kind of procedural or medical drama like Grey's, whatever. Those are some I have found interesting, and if you haven't seen any of the other ones I missed from the first big group, I'd suggest watching those. They'll hold up. It's all the same stuff, but getting attached to the characters and the in-between moments are what makes the show good or not. If they're not having those moments, you don't really care, and there's some shows where I kind of get that, or they're doing too much. I like it more solid, bounce off a few people, more tight-knit, because I feel like certain things weigh a little bit more, or you care about the characters a little bit more. But then again, these shows are only running a season to 2 seasons, and yeah, you get more weight with that kind of quantity, but quality also matters a lot to me, especially when it comes to a show. Do I watch trash sometimes? You better believe it. Am I willing to talk about it? I don't know. I haven't felt the need to since this, where I'm like, man, I've been watching a lot of these lately, and they've been consistently good. That's why I even sat down to make a video, to be honest. So hopefully you found something new. I'll be back with something different to talk about next time, but still a recommendation of something for you to watch, read, do out there in the world, and pass some time, have some fun. I'll catch you later.